how the war in Ukraine is affecting Europe's security?
Well, we've gone from a state of peace to one where there is active conflict, where people are losing lives, and where the security of Ukraine is now a matter of widespread concern and is a central point for NATO allies. We do not want to see this war spread into involving NATO itself, but there is the risk of escalation. And one of the objectives, obviously, is to secure Ukraine's future without a widening of the war. And that is a matter for hard planning, for competent and good execution of tactics in Ukraine, and at the same time strengthening, in a preventative way, the borders of NATO.
Why do you think the UK and the US intel community chose to disclose their assessment on Russia's actions before the invasion and also after that? Was that effective?
Well, I think before if you can cast your mind back to before the invasion, there was a lot of argument going on about were the Russians, were they just having an exercise? And a lot of people said, no, they're just having an exercise. This isn't going to result in an invasion. The UK and the US, and everyone knows these two countries worked together closely on intelligence matters, were quite clear that actually this was the preparation for an invasion. And I think the governments felt, in my view rightly, that it was important that people understood that something serious and which broke the parameters of political action in Europe and the basis on which states behave towards each other. This was about to happen, and the people needed to be warned that something serious was going to happen, and also put in a position where their response could be more immediate and more effective than it might otherwise have been.
We know that around 1,000 Ukrainian soldiers are being trained in Great Britain, and we also know that this country is sending a lot of military equipment to Ukraine. Do you think that Great Britain is about to send even more equipment?
Well, certainly the UK is doing a lot. It has, of course, to look after its own security, and there are actually, frankly, limits to the extent to which we have stocks that we can disperse, in at the same time looking after the security of the country. But we're certainly going to do the maximum that we can. And we've sent some important equipment of a kind which will enable the Ukrainians to be more precise in the way in which their artillery operates, which is really very important. So I'm pleased that we've been able to do this. I'm certainly that we will go on doing it. And training, of course, is very important because Ukraine is now switching, essentially, from using a kit that it's been familiar with, which has been ex-Soviet largely, to actually now current equipment which NATO countries are using. And for that, you need training, because they're different. So I'm sure there will be more training, and there'll probably be more training by other countries as well. And it's all part, I think, of the way in which NATO is seeking to safeguard the security of Ukraine and prevent the spread of the war.
As for what's happening right now in the UK on a political level, do you think is that going to affect in any way the help Great Britain is giving to Ukraine?
I think in short answer, no. I say that confidently because the support that has been embodied in the Prime Minister's personal activities is supported in his own party, it's supported in the opposition parties, and it's supported in the country. So I think, and the Defence Minister, Ben Wallace, has been operating very closely in cooperation with him. So I think you can expect that this is a policy that will continue, and that I see no reason myself to worry about us changing our line. I think we will continue to both invest in and to reinforce the policies we're already pursuing.
Following Russia's invasion in Ukraine, we've seen not only a conventional war, but also an information war and a lot of cyber attacks throughout the EU. What should the EU do even more to prevent institutions, private companies and citizens from being the target of cyber attacks?
I mean, I'd say two things about that. I think the Russians have been careful not to get themselves in a position where they are themselves accused of escalation, and therefore giving the right and the incentive to opposition countries and to NATO actually to retaliate. However, you're quite right to say that cyber attack is one of the instruments. We must expect it all the time, that this is a form of disinformation, hybrid warfare that is now part of any kind of conflict. And it goes on, frankly, whether or not there's actually kinetic war going on as well. The answer is we have to go on increasing our resilience, and that's not just being secure, it's actually enabling companies and government services not only to prevent attack, but if it does happen, actually to get up and running very fast. And that's a more complicated form of defense than simply taking precautions and hoping that they're adequate to prevent an attack actually penetrating your systems. So we have to be able companies have to be able to respond and get back online quickly. And that is really something which government and the private sector need to do together. There has to be a partnership over the long term. What you can see developing in the cyber world, frankly, is it's a triangular cooperation between the researchers and those who engage in research projects, the private sector who do all the financing, the government which lays the foundation and the legal framework, and which is actually also a customer. So you have academics, private sector and government working together. And I see that as being a pattern of cooperation for the future in lots of areas where emerging technologies are important.